is Terry Bradshaw, quarterback, Pittsburgh Steelers.
It's 7:15. There's a new home run champion of all time, and it's Henry Aaron.
This is baseball, Major League Baseball. And this is
ABC's Monday Night Baseball, live from Fenway Park in Boston, Massachusetts.
Looking. He's under the gun. He's fired. He throws. It is.
Touchdown! Oh, my! Victory. And the agony of defeat. Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier!
Well, it's March 25th, 1974, in our time capsule known as the Past Our Prime podcast. My name is Scott Johnston, one of the three hosts of this endeavor, along with Mark Hoffman. Hey, Mark.
How you doing?
Good. And Bill Mahoney. How you doing, buddy?
Excellent. Let's
Good.
get it on.
Yeah. So once again, we are looking back at sports through the prism of old issues of Sports Illustrated. 50 years ago, we just basically, randomly picked 50 years because we wanted to have a historical perspective, but if we went back any further, the odds were going to be much less that we could find guests that were of that era. And so far, I think we've been pretty lucky with the people that we've talked to that either were on the cover, wrote about the person on the cover, or had something to do with that issue. So I think 50 was the right number to go with. And I tell you, man, I just am amazed at how much I'm learning through all this process. Mark, you know all this stuff because you're 83 years old, but
That was 10 years ago. But
Tom Burleson on the cover here, one of the greatest players ever for NC State, along with Bill Walton on the cover, and they're about to meet up in the Final Four as UCLA goes looking for their 8th straight national championship. But we're going to start with the letter from the publisher. Little note here, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Susan Adams is in charge of the faces in the crowd. She's a 24-year-old who gets hundreds of letters and nominations per week. Arthur Ashe and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, just a couple of famous people who turned out to be people that we had all know, but most of the people in the faces in the crowd are people that we never heard from again. And it was just kind of like their little moment in the sun. I mean, could you imagine, you're doing the pole vault at your high school and you set a conference record, and the next thing you know, you're in Sports Illustrated. That must have been such a thrill for so many of these young kids, older seniors. They had basically no criteria.
yeah, that was my favorite part of the magazine, was just to look and see from people different parts of the country playing different types of sports. And then, of course, if you had hindsight, you could go back and look to see, did they amount to anything, or even if it was in a separate career, from this, but they excelled in that separate career.
Well, yeah, you look at even like someone like Wanda Oliver, who was the National Rifle gal. Let me look at her again. She was the National Rifle Association small bore mark. She went on to really great stuff. She won a bronze medal in the Olympic Games and a gold medal in the Pan American Games. So here's these kids that we look at and go, National Rifle stuff. They go on and do amazing things. Still, same with Rennie Mullen. She still has the 7th fastest time at Shippensburg State University. Because you look at them now, at that time, they're young kids, but you look back later and go, they were great athletes.
Yeah. And like I said, it really was more for the person that went unnoticed.
Yeah.
It wasn't the guy who was being recruited by the colleges.
That's right.
Occasionally that did happen, but it was really, I don't know who came up with that idea, but it was brilliant.
Yeah, Rennie Mullen, I want to make sure. She was a swimmer. But I see someone here, Tom Johnston.
I had Tom written down. Is he a wrestler?
He was.
Yes, he was a
good.
wrestler.
Yes, he was.
I think they said he won like the 70-pound division.
78 pound. Very good.
I was
good memory.
78 pounds in the 3rd grade, so definitely no.
Okay.
I could take him.
No relation.
Yeah.
I could have taken Johnston with a T.
That's like, hey.
Before you do the
Yeah, yeah,
scorecard,
yeah, yeah.
there were a couple ads I just wanted to go through
Sure,
because
sure.
we all know the first 10 pages.
By the
first
way,
straight
if
is
anyone's
ads.
interested in running real ads, feel free to reach out to Bill Mahoney.
Woo! Ready, go. Let's get it on.
But instead, we'll just mock the old ads.
Yes.
So what's great again about Sports Illustrated is like the first 10 pages are all ads. In fact, half the magazine's ads. And when you go back in time, some of them have not aged well. And so this first one is for Travel Lodge. And it's Travel Logic about vacations. And there's a dad, and he's showing something to his son, and the son's getting all excited. And it's what they're going to do on their vacation. And he's showing them on a map. Now, I know you know what a map is because it's that
What's a
icon
map?
on your phone, right?
Right, right.
But there were actually physical maps that you had
yeah.
to get out. And,
Yeah, like
and
the Thomas guy.
That's I was just about to say that.
I
Yeah.
lived on the Thomas
So did I.
guy.
So did I. But
which made no sense.
But look at the kid's really interested.
Yeah, he's,
You know?
he's excited.
Yeah.
We're lost!
Well, because the dad's got him going in a circle. So,
Plus, dads never look at maps.
No.
I know where I am.
Well,
Get in the back seat. Don't put on a seatbelt while I smoke a cigarette.
I'll give you something to cry
Right.
about.
Are we there yet?
I'll give you.
I can just hear the director there going, okay, point at that. No, kid, smile like you're having a lot of fun, okay? The other ad that was really great is there's one for Royal, it's like work processing stuff, electric typewriters, huge adding machines, again, stuff that's on your phone. But back
Right.
then, there were these physical huge pieces,
Yeah.
that we used and stuff like that. I remember my dad was a wine salesman, and he would always ask me to come down and get on the adding machine and add up some figures for him. And I'd press the buttons, and that was always very neat.
If you want to age the three of us, not our young counterpart Jeremy Ruby, but the three of us all started in this business using typewriters.
Yes, we did.
Unbelievable.
Yes, we
You
did.
know?
Yep.
You'd have
yep.
to write a script at the last second, and if you made too many typos, you'd rip it up and have to start
And
all
remember the
over.
You
sports-
had a
remember
lead
the
pencil,
sports-
you could kind of erase some of the mistakes.
Yeah.
And the sports teletype that
Oh,
used
yeah.
to come.
Rip 'em.
Love that.
Oh, my God.
If
Yeah.
my team was in a big game, you'd
Yep,
hear
yep.
that thing and I'd run
Run
over
over
there
it.
and be like,
Yep.
some college baseball score. I was like, I don't care about Irvine and
We used to have a little
Fullerton.
ticker in the back, and I'd always
Back
like,
off that one.
hurt, right?
Back off that one.
that's right, you're a Titan. And the last ad I just want to point out
only
was
because
for-
he flunked out of
Houston.
Because he was a party animal. That's why.
They asked me politely to leave.
I don't even go here.
You've heard of Hurricane Bill.
With
that's
as
what it
many
was.
classes that I didn't go to, technically, I didn't go there. I got a standing ovation, though, when I went into my political science class the last day, and the teacher goes, "Hey, everybody, Mr. Mahoney decided to join us." And everything. I thought, I haven't been here in 2 months. Well, you think about it. You look at these ads. This is something Jeremy never has to deal with if he looks at a magazine. They don't have cigarette ads anymore.
No.
So it's like
These magazines are basically cigarettes,
and booze.
alcohol,
Yeah.
and insurance.
Yes.
And cars. Which
Yes.
is a great combination.
Yeah.
Let's drink, smoke, and get in this automobile.
Yeah,
Well,
and
come
if you
on,
crash,
real fast.
Here's insurance.
We all know that Winston tastes good. Good. Like a cigarette should. Yeah, there you go. See?
Roll the windows up and smoke out, baby.
That's right. Mom, can I roll the window down? It's cold!
you
But
can
you
get
can
in a-
see through the smoke.
I can't breathe.
Get on a plane and everyone could be smoking.
That's right. They had those teeny little ashtrays next to you on the seat. Yeah. I burned myself.
Anything from, let's move on to the scorecard. Billy, you said something about Bowie Kuhn, I think?
Yeah, he had told the Braves that he expects Aaron to play pretty much like he did the year before.
Henry Aaron.
Henry
Yep.
Aaron because he was going for Babe Ruth's home run record.
Right.
So he didn't want him to sit it out and try to hit the home run at home. So he said, no, he's got to play. So Aaron went 1 for 3 in his first game, hit a home run. Didn't play in game 2, 0-3 in game 3, but then he got the home run in Atlanta on game 4. What got me with this was the attendance. Like the first game in Cincinnati, 52,000 people. Second game, sorry to tell you, Aaron's not playing, 17,000. He plays the next day, 35,000. Then he gets the home run record, 53,000. But by game 6 in Atlanta, 6,000 people.
Wow.
So I'm saying that
What
was
have
the
you done
only
for me
reason.
lately?
Exactly.
So he came into the season then with 7-13.
Yes.
and he ties it on opening
That's
day.
Yes, and then he hits the
Wow.
winner. Yeah.
So he could have
He
hit
could have.
it in Cincinnati.
in the third
In the
game.
third game.
Yes, because he sat out game 2.
Wow, that's interesting.
But he told him he can't. He told the Braves he has to play like he normally did the year before, and the Braves did that. Nowadays, I can't picture them if
they'd
wanted
come
to
up
do
with
it.
some phantom
Yes,
injury.
right. Yes.
Now, like we said earlier, MLB would manipulate it to where they definitely would have started with a 10-game homestand.
Yes.
He just needed
Yes.
2 home runs.
Yes.
That is pretty short-sighted.
I think Aaron felt the same way. Let me play.
Yeah.
Let me play. Where if I hit the
These
home run,
guys
yeah.
only knew one way
Yes,
back then.
yes.
They weren't thinking about selling tickets
No.
or anything like that. They were thinking about at-bats.
Yep.
What else?
They had this Little League in New Jersey where they didn't allow women to play, girls to play, because they
The
were
way it should be.
Yes. Damn it, man.
You're canceled.
Keep the girls off the field.
It's
Put
saying
them in
it was-
cheerleading outfits.
It's too much danger of girls being
That was
seriously
Bill
injured.
Mahoney who said that.
That's right. You know me with a little daughter. She'll never play Little League, damn it. Never.
So the Little League objection was there's too much danger for girls being seriously hurt. But the lady that was championing they should play said that they should, she said with a trace of sarcasm, because girls of that age are too big for the boys, which is true, because girls grew faster than boys. How many times, you'll see a 12-year-old girl just tower over a 12-year-old boy? So, and it's amazing now with as many women that play Little League baseball. That
Yeah,
back
I
then
know.
they were-
Once
How
again,
much
looking,
is it? How many? It's 100,000 girls now playing
Right.
Little League.
Is that right?
Yes. But
I mean, once again, we're looking back through the prism of history.
Yeah.
100,000 girls are playing now because of those girls.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
That don't get
And-
credit.
And,
they
the
should.
thing is, I have no problem with them not wanting the girls to play in the Little League, but you got to get them something.
Something. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
and there probably weren't enough girls back then to play to have your own league. So what are you going to do? You're going to just not have girls play sports? That's not an answer. So
But I think saying that I think they said that they would suspend play until the courts or legislature assured them
know.
that the games would go on without girls.
Right.
How stupid is that? I mean,
well,
just
that's when adults are acting like children.
yeah. But I remember in spring training, mind you, she was softball. But I sat next to Jenny Finch one day during a game.
Yeah.
She could have played baseball. She was just. I mean, in her softball career, she was dominant.
Right.
When I saw her out on the field, she actually married a pitcher from the White Sox at the time, Alexander Daigle, I think. And she was dominant. So I'm saying girls like that pave the way. They should have been playing, and they'll continue to play.
Well, she could throw the ball 1,000 miles
Yes.
an hour, and she could whack.
Yes.
So
Yes.
She was something. What else, Mark?
Oh, they said it had a couple good things. Gene Sarazen, who was now 72 at the time of the issue.
Which would make him 122 now. I
Right.
don't think he's with us anymore.
We can
although
try to get him as a
he,
guest.
He is in the Old Testament.
Yes. Well, he
Like
was
Mark is.
Yes, I went up with Moses to get
Yes,
those
you did.
commandments.
Yes.
I'm the reason we broke 5 of
The
them.
other
Mark-
reason we only have 10.
Mark was actually in a fantasy league back then, so he was pestering
Oh,
Moses.
yes.
Is
I
that
said,
right?
Moses,
Right.
you got to trade me Noah and 2 giraffes. Okay. But anyway, they said it. Gene Sarazen said, what's the greatest thrill? It's double eagle in the Masters. There's hole in one at the British Open. He said, neither. It was getting my first Social Security check.
Wow,
He must have made a ton of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, he really knew how to live.
And it's scary.
Everybody gets a Social Security check. Nobody wins the Masters, or 30 people have something like that. So, got to disagree with you on that one, Gene.
And then the other one that was really good was
Sounds
Lou
like
Brock.
Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
We're talking a lot about the UCLA dynasty in the last few weeks, and we will again in just a bit. But there was another dynasty around this time, and that was the Montreal Canadiens, a dynasty imperiled. And they were great for many, many reasons, Billy, but one of them being Hall of Famer Ken Dryden.
Yeah, I know. I understand the Canadians are down on their luck, so to speak. They only finished with 99 points that year, but Ken Dryden could arguably be the best goalie of all time. Didn't play a lot, but he won the cup. He won a cup in 72-73. Then after that, he left hockey to go clerking at a law firm. So he came back the next year, went 30-9, And he won more cups, 4 more cups over the last 6 years of his career, won 4 cups. Also won the Vezina for 4 years.
Wow.
He was an amazing
Did it say
goalie.
why he left?
Just because he wanted to clerk at a law firm.
Wanted to make money.
Yeah,
probably.
he wanted to learn. He wanted to be in law.
Huh.
But I mean, and I only got to see him play just a little bit because that was my first years getting into hockey, and I remember watching him play, and I liked Bunny LaRock better just because I like the name Bunny. But he was just an amazing goalie. If you just look at his stats, that you win a cup, take a year off, come back, win more cups. Not many people can do that in any sport to come back. Michael Jordan being obviously a guy that can do that.
Yeah.
Well, I see a lot of parallels with the Montreal Canadiens with UCLA. They weren't expected to lose. UCLA that year lost a couple games and everyone was like, the sky is falling. And here, I mean, they lost, I think, was it 6-0 to the Flyers and 9-2 to the New York Rangers.
Yep.
So, Richard says our pride has gone down the drain. And they weren't a bad team. I mean, like you said, they had 99 points.
Yeah, Henri Richard, who Gordie Howe played with. He played with everybody.
In the late 40s.
Yes.
But what's funny is, so everyone's thinking maybe the needle's going down, the Canadians. Yeah. And they didn't win it in 74, but in 76, 77, 78, and 79 they did.
And who was their lead player on those teams? Guy Lafleur.
Right.
All of a sudden he came in, the Flower came in, picked it right back up, because I remember being a jumbo Kings fan growing up. I mean, Montreal would have like 120 points. Kings would have 66. And if the Kings lost like 6-2, you go, hey, they got 2 goals.
Yeah, we were right in there.
Yeah.
So the Final Four is set. Down and out, back up and ready is the name of the article. And, you got to know that UCLA is going to be a part of the Final Four. They had won the damn thing 7 years running. Walton is graduating after this year, so this is it for him. And rumor has it that it could be it for the Wizard as well. Wooden, 63 years old. I didn't know this, but UCLA has a mandatory retirement age of 65. So
is that why he left?
I think he
Mark?
was ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, and it was interesting because, I've mentioned it before. He lost the year he probably should have won, and then he won a year he probably should have lost. But it just history-wise, maybe if they had ended up beating North Carolina State that year, he would have retired after that one. But because they didn't, he came back, and he didn't make the announcement he was going to retire that final year until I think after I think the Louisville game, a game they should have lost. That's when he made the announcement. But anyway, things work out the way they work out. But the Final Four was great on paper.
Mark, did you watch the UCLA game against Dayton? Do you remember
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And I was so
3
nervous
overtimes.
because that was triple overtime.
Yeah.
And man, there were so many times in that game I thought, oh my God, they're going to lose in the first round, which as a kid, I had never experienced that with UCLA. I didn't know how to handle that,
As an adult?
Still can't handle it. Well,
But you're
no,
used to
I'm
it.
used to the losing.
He used to get mad. We'd go to a game or two, he'd get real mad. Now he's more like, they're just not playing.
That's
well.
because I'm old.
That's
Yeah. No, I think
takes
we
too
all,
much energy.
We all lose that passion.
Yeah,
in
where you're going to
terms of,
kill someone, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Raiders would lose a game 40 years ago. It would ruin my week.
Yeah.
And now I go into a game expecting them to lose.
Yep.
And when they do, doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
Well, here's how I save myself all the anxiety. I tape the game, and then I don't find out what the score is, but I'll look like on a fan forum or something. And if they're saying positive things, hey, great performance tonight, then I can watch the game and relax. If they said,
fair.
we crapped the bed, I'm like, well, okay, I can watch it, but at least I know we lost.
I have no problem taping games and knowing the outcome. Doesn't bother me
Yeah.
at all. I don't
Yeah.
need that suspense. I'm more interested in the how anyway.
Yeah.
rather
Right, but I
than
don't want to know the
outcome.
final score, the
Yeah,
big
I
score.
get that.
wouldn't be
I get that.
surprised.
I'm just saying it doesn't bother me. It doesn't. I'll take that back. If I tape like a Warriors playoff game, I missed it or something, and I go and find out that they lost, I won't watch it
Yeah.
because it
That's
will
fair.
make me mad.
Yeah.
It depends. Like, for instance, I went out of town, and I taped a Spurs-Lakers game. And
Now, see, that's different because you're not looking for a win in that game. You're
Right.
looking to see how the young guys
Yeah.
played.
Yeah.
Right. And even if they lose, but I know that Victor Wembanyama had a great game, then I'll watch
Which
it
he
just to
did.
see. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like the real deal.
Oh,
doesn't
yeah,
he?
he sure does. I just need a
What's
sporting
he?
cast.
How old is he?
20, just turned 20.
20. Doggone, man.
I told Caitlin, she's going to kill me for this. I said, Caitlin, perfect match. He's only about 5-6 months older than you. He's a millionaire.
Foot and a half
you like
taller.
French, he speaks French,
But Caitlin is tall, so
I know.
at least she's
That's
got
why I
that.
said
yeah.
foot and a
yeah,
half.
yeah,
but yeah, 5'10" and a half and 7'3" is
Yeah.
still quite.
And Caitlin Wembayama is a good name.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Now she'll kill me. She can't listen to this podcast.
That's right. She doesn't anyway.
That's right. She has headphones on, you said.
The only kid who listens to this is 5.
And all she says is, good,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How'd you like our interview with Mark Cram, Callie?
good,
Oh, and what about Larry Farmer?
good,
Larry Zonka?
good. You get the drift. It's all good.
Right.
It's like, Callie, do you do all right? Good.
Okay, so UCLA gets to the Final Four. Like we said, they beat Dayton, and then they escape Dayton, triple overtime. Think of that, 111 to 100.
Yeah.
I know it was 15 extra minutes, but my gosh.
But you also have to remember, it's there's no shot clock back then, which
I
makes it
know.
even more remarkable.
So you could hold, ignorance here. You could hold the ball the whole time if you could you go down on a play and just pass the ball the
Yep.
whole time if you
Yep.
were up 2-0?
So
good.
an example, when Alcindor was playing at UCLA, USC had a game where they beat UCLA like 46-44, and they just basically passed the ball back and forth. And Dean Smith became famous for the four-court stall, where
Four corners.
Four corners, yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
But literally, the game, 8 minutes into the game, like there's 12 minutes to go in the first half. It's like 10-8, and they'll start stalling.
We often talk about, rule changes that, starting a guy on second base or whatever. The shot clock's the best rule change they ever made, maybe in any sport.
And I think the original shot clock was 45 seconds.
Yes.
And then they went down to 35 and now to 30.
Yeah, in college. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, because that's just ridiculous.
Because watching those North Carolina teams, think of that. They would have Worthy, Perkins, and Jordan, and they're stalling.
Yeah, it's just.
It was just torture to watch.
But he was playing within the rules. But
So the Final Four, you had Michigan beating Notre Dame. So 2 months after the Irish ended the Bruins' 88-game win streak, their season was over. Marquette beats Vanderbilt. And then Al McGuire's team beat the Wolverines. So they go to the Final Four. In the other one, you had UCLA, of course, advancing. You had NC State advancing despite an incredible scare in their game.
Yeah, David Thompson took in the first half, I think it was against Pitt. He was going for the basketball, and then he kind of did a flip in midair and then landed with a thud head first on the ground.
You've seen that? You saw that?
Yeah, there's video of it. You can go on.
Okay.
And it's not great video, but just the impact. You see that head to the court, how he did not break his neck, how he did not die.
Crack his skull.
Is just unbelievable.
And then, he gets taken off on a stretcher. And, his poor teammates. And this team was not deep.
Mm-hmm.
You'll look at some of these box scores, and some of the players on the team would play the entire 50 minutes. Like I know in the UCLA game, 2 guys, I want to say Monty Tao, who we'll be talking with next week, played the whole game. So they were not a very deep team. Not to mention David Thompson was, if not the best player in the country, it was either him or Walton. He was sensational. So you lose him, you're probably done.
But the other thing, too, I think back then, the game wasn't officiated like it is today. You watch a college basketball game now, and the officials will call foul on just about anything. Yep. And it just slows the game to a crawl. And back then, they let them play so, people didn't get into foul trouble, and then they could play the majority of the game.
But we look at these guys, and we just see players out there. For North Carolina State to see their friend David Thompson go down, that's got to be an emotional weight on you, and to be able to come back and continue to win has to be, heads or good for them.
It wasn't a blowout.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Helped.
Yeah.
But the thing also to keep in mind too is, here's your buddy getting taken off on a stretcher. This isn't now where whoever's with him could text him and say he's moving, he's fine.
That's right.
So they're not getting updates on how he's doing.
Yeah.
So the fact that but he must have been doing okay because he returned to the court. Now he didn't play, but he did come back And like I said, they won in a blowout. So you got North Carolina State.
But I was going to say he had his head all bandaged up, like a
15
turban
stitches.
almost there.
15 stitches.
Yeah, 15 stitches.
And they said that he looked like a scene out of the Spirit of '76, where those
Right,
revolutionary
right,
figures,
yeah.
with the fife, and they got the Band-Aid over. Yeah, so he literally looked like he'd been to war.
Phenomenal player. You got NC State and UCLA in one, and then in the other you got Marquette. And who are they going to play? Well, Oral Roberts beat Louisville by 3 to advance to play Kansas in the Midwest. Did you guys see this?
This is a great one, yeah.
Their coach, Ken Trickey, had been told that he was done at the end of the season by university president, who was
Oral Roberts.
I don't think he had to answer to anyone other than God, which will come into play rather soon.
Yeah.
The team got an at-large bid and made the tourney, and after the win over Louisville, the coach got a DUI. Uh-oh. So Roberts suspended him, but he and Trickey prayed together, and Roberts decided to reinstate him after the coach told him he thought God wanted him to coach.
Yeah.
But apparently, God also wanted Kansas, because Oral Roberts blew a 7-point lead with less than 3 minutes to play and lost in overtime. So there's your Final Four: Kansas and Marquette, UCLA, and North Carolina State.
And then what happened to Ken Trickey, the coach of Oral Roberts?
Yeah, tell me.
He got fired.
Is that right?
Right after the game.
Oh, really?
Yes. Right after the game.
And as good
And
as
he went straight to the bar.
Yes, there you go.
Bottoms up.
I'm not playing tomorrow. Give me another one.
Pull over, pull into the pits, and pray. Now, this is about apparently in 1973, this is about Formula One racing or stock car racing. And all forms of racing was in trouble back then because of the energy crisis that we've talked about. But the year prior at the Indy 500, 1973, a bunch of crashes resulted in the death of 2 drivers, a pit crewman, and burned a slew of spectators. So huge issues because of accidents at the Indy 500. So they implemented all these rule changes to try and slow down the cars, make them less flammable. In the article, they note from a PR standpoint, it's not good business to cook your customers.
no.
Which, if you think about it, they're right. It is not good business. Attendance was down at the Ontario Speedway, so they tried to make it more fan-friendly with some adjustments, one of them being allowing campers to park in the infield. My brother Steve and his friends have gone down there. My brother
fun.
doesn't really care about racing per se, but he says it's just a great time. Go down there, music and a really good weekend for race fans and just people who like to have a good time.
It is, having done a motorcycle one where you get to park on the infield. I went on a Friday. I came back on Sunday.
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened in the other few days. It's just that much fun.
Yeah.
You were drinking that much?
Yeah.
Well, no, I was just very tired.
Just had a lot of fun.
I was tired.
Why is it always drinking with
Mark,
you?
what is with
Can
you?
you not have fun
Streaking
with
and
drinking?
Drinking and drinking, buddy.
Well, there's only one way you get streaking.
That's right.
That's
I
right.
I could have done that because I came back tan all over.
If you had a national streaking competition, you could be sponsored by some alcohol company.
Oh, no doubt.
But no, that California 500. Sorry, that the Unsers pretty much they won 6 of the 11 races.
Yeah,
They're pretty
Bobby
good.
and Al.
Yeah.
And this one came down to Bobby winning by a half a second. Next up, we've talked about with Mark Cram Jr. Last month about the heavyweight division back then was just phenomenal. And here's 2 names that resonate still to this day, and that's Ken Norton, who's no longer with us, and George Foreman, who is. Foreman back then was just a beast. I mean, Norton was an up-and-comer, and I remember seeing Norton, and I was like, that's what a heavyweight's supposed to look like.
He was
He
cut.
just was chiseled.
Yes, he was.
He looked like a Hercules. Yeah. Not that Frazier and Muhammad and Foreman, but they were just big guys. They weren't. I'm not saying they were out of shape or anything, but Norton was chiseled. So
He was all muscle.
he was seeding a mental victory garden in his head Norton was. He was practicing all these things to try and tell himself that when he got hit by Foreman, that it actually didn't hurt, that he was going to be okay, so that when he became in his subconscious, he would know just to get back up. But there's a big difference between mentally thinking you're going to get hit by Foreman and actually getting hit by Foreman. Coming off 2 fights against Ali, one in which he broke Ali's jaw and won in a split decision, and then lost in a... Go ahead.
And I remember the fight that Norton beat Ali, and it was actually on Wide World of Sports, and it was on regular television. It was
Imagine
special
that.
That's awesome.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
It was like a Saturday afternoon on ABC, and and it was a big surprise. And you were talking about, like, Norton had this chiseled physique, and Foreman was really strong, but wasn't quite as cut. But having a chiseled physique doesn't mean you're stronger than the next guy. You just have thinner skin, or the way your body is, so the muscles show up quicker. A thin, short person will have more muscle show because the skin is thinner, basically. So that doesn't equal strength, necessarily.
No, it just looks like it, and certainly as a kid, you think it does.
Right.
I still don't want to be hit in the face by either of them.
No, neither would I. They would kick my,
Yeah, what about in the stomach? Would you take one to the stomach?
You die.
No, that was one of my favorite shows growing up was the Rockford Files that debuted in 1974. And every fight sequence James Garner would get in, they'd always be hitting him in the stomach. And I'm wondering if there was a clause in the contract. Don't hit me in the face.
Right, don't touch my face.
Just keep hitting me in the stomach.
His face is insured.
Right.
A year earlier, Foreman went to a sparring session of Ali's and walked into the ring, laid down on his back, and let Ali put his foot on his stomach and stand over him. He was a gentle giant. He was basically saying, I respect you, and we will get it on at some point. But Foreman said, I want to be known as the most destructive man in the whole world. I want to be an executioner. Now, we know George now from his Foreman grill and his smile, and he's sweet. Back then, he was a mean SOB, or at least, that was his persona.
No one knows that Foreman. And most people nowadays, he's just a really nice guy. They have no idea what kind of fighter he was.
He was scary.
Yes, he was.
His strength was off the charts in a fight against a guy named Luis Perez, I think it's pronounced. Perez broke his arm trying to block a Foreman punch. Isn't that crazy?
And the other thing about Foreman, we know Foreman now as being very gregarious, talks a lot. He was a man of very few words back then. So, which makes it even the transformation of him as a sports figure is just more remarkable.
The fight was going to take place in Venezuela. Foreman had fought twice in the last 14 months, 2 minutes in a win over Jose Ramon, 2 rounds in a win over Joe Frazier. Norton said, he may be stronger, but not by much, and I'm faster. The fight went 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Foreman was the victor. The really interesting part about it is after the fight, Venezuela wouldn't let either fighter leave the country for tax purposes. They said that they had told them going in that they would not have to pay taxes. And then they backed, they reneged on that. Norton paid his taxes, I believe, and was able to leave. Foreman fought it because he was the winner, got the bigger purse, the champion, and I think was held in Venezuela for 4 to 5 days. So that was an interesting little tidbit.
Wow.
That was after the fight.
They get it in writing, they can say whatever they want, but get it in writing.
That brings us to part 2 of the Babe Ruth series that we started last week with the granddaughter of Babe Ruth. Yes, that's right, the granddaughter, Linda Ruth Tossetti, the living biological granddaughter of the Babe. So go ahead and download that one and give that a check out if you wish to hear her talking about her grandfather. It was very illuminating. And today we will be talking to another gentleman that is connected to the Babe, but in a much different way. Yes. We asked Linda if there was one movie by on her grandfather about the Babe that stood out, and she kind of went, And what's the famous one, Mark?
Well, there's the
Ben-
Babe Ruth story with William Bendix.
And she said that was horrible.
That was like the Claire story, I think she said, and then there was the Babe with John Goodman. That was also
kinda,
pretty bad.
She actually said The Sandlot, which is
Yeah.
not really about
Babe
the Babe,
Ruth.
but
Right. She talked about this
Yes.
made-for-TV movie
right.
that
She
was
mentioned
pretty
she
good.
she couldn't remember the name of it, but the star of that made-for-TV movie, I think it was in the early '90s, is a guy by the name of Stephen Lang, longtime actor, stage, film, was
TV.
But she mentioned that one in
Yeah.
particular, which I thought was great, and I can't wait to tell Stephen that when he joins us in a little bit to talk about playing the Babe and what that was like and what it entailed. I can tell you ahead of time, you could tell he had played baseball before. You know, that's the first thing I always look for. Is, do these guys look like they've ever picked up a bat or thrown a ball? So part 2 of the series is Ruth basically leaving Boston and heading to New York. Attendance was way up after the war. Rule changes outlawed trick pitches like the spitter. Players copied Ruth's swing and bat, which was 54 ounces when he first came into the league, something his granddaughter Linda attested to last week. The Yankees lineup before Ruth got there was known as Murderers Row. Before he got there. Why? Well, in 1919, they hit 45 home runs as a team.
Yeah, wow.
16 more than the Babe had in his final season in Boston, and they were considered a Murderers Row. That shows you how much of a dead ball era that was, and how much Babe was about to change baseball for forever. Attendance is over 1 million for the first time ever in his first year there. And Ping Bodie was Babe's roommate. And when asked about Ruth, he said, "I don't know anything about him." And they said, "You room with him. What's he like when you're alone with him?" "I don't room with him. I room with his suitcase."
Yes.
Because Babe liked to...
Party, be out.
he liked to be out late.
Well, it's interesting, too. So Babe really, the game was ready for a change. Babe was the perfect implement to change the game. And if you think about it, Americans like scoring. They like offense. I mean, the NFL has done everything it can to make it harder on the defense.
Right.
More points in the NFL. The NBA used to be a league not that long ago where you scored 80 points in a game. I mean, the Derek Fisher .4 game was in the 70s, the low 70s.
Right.
But now there's just a ton of offense in the NBA. And again, people like that. So offense, and when the offense came to baseball, people like that.
Yeah, you forget.
There was a commercial that, women like the long ball.
That's
so,
right.
They
get off to a slow start in his first season. He doesn't hit his first home run until May 1st. And they're kind of going, hello. Ends up hitting 12 that month, most ever for a month. Hits another 12 in June. So he was off and running. Finished with 54. The guy who was second was George Sisler. He had 19. He bought all sorts of cars, and he got into trouble with them, ignoring most, if not all, traffic laws. Had a car accident in Pennsylvania where he rolled the car, and a local paper reported that he was dead. Yeah. Other papers were more accurate. He showed up in New York that evening, much to the pleasure of the Yankees owner. But could you imagine being, there was kind of tabloidy journalism going back then, but reporting that Babe Ruth is dead, that would be quite a headline.
But he had other players in the car and his wife. And then he got up and they walked to a farmhouse and slept there. This article gives you a much different look or perspective on Babe Ruth. He played center field one day against the Athletics and he dropped the ball. So the guy in the Athletics the next day found a brown derby, which is the sign of a singular ineptitude, had it wrapped up and presented it to Ruth before the next game was about to start, which you would never see nowadays either. Ruth took it real well, put the hat on and waved to the crowd.
Next year, 1921, he hits 59 home runs, just unheard of. Signs a new deal, 5 years, $52,000 a year. He was an incredibly generous man. Linda told us about how he'd go to dinner and he would buy the whole place dinner, so he was...
But you know why he got the $52,000 a year? Because originally it was like 50. He said, "No, make it 52." And he goes, "Why?" That way I say I'm making $1,000 a week.
Right.
Yeah.
As we have mentioned, we're talking about the Babe again this week because it is the second part of a 3-part series from a book by Robert Carew called Babe, The Legend Comes to Life. That was one of 2 books that was turned into a TV movie in 1991 titled Babe Ruth, and it starred Stephen Lang, Mr. Lang has had a long career on stage, on the big screen, the small screen, and any screen in between. Manhunter, Tombstone, Gettysburg, Gods and Generals, and of course Avatar, to name just a few of his many roles over the years. And Stephen, a.k.a. The Babe, joins us now. Thank you, Slang. I guess your friends, if I may call you Slang, for coming on the Past Our Prime podcast.
Well, thank you. Good to be here with you fellas.
You know, Stephen, in the sports world, they don't come more iconic than Babe Ruth. When you were asked to play such a larger-than-life character, what did you think?
I was pretty, at first, I was confused, baffled, inadequate. I think that would be a really good word for it. I was feeling heavy-duty feelings of inadequacy. And I'll tell you, I remember when I was first called about it, they said, they're doing a film, NBC's doing a film of Babe Ruth, and they really they're thinking about if you would be in. And I said, great, what role? And they said, the Babe. I said, really? Wow. And then they did. They offered me the role, and it blew my mind. At the time when I was called with the definitive offer to do the role, I was actually I was on a fast. I was doing a week-long fast, which is pretty, ironic when you think I'm going to play Babe
just
Ruth,
like the
right?
Babe.
Always.
Yeah, just like the Babe, right?
He would fast sometimes as much as a half hour.
Oh, at a time. He could go an hour or so, absolutely. In any case, I was up at this place in the Berkshires fasting, and I found out, and I remember, and I'd been 3 days or so into the fast, so I was pretty loopy anyway, I was hallucinating and stuff.
More loopy than normal?
Even more than usual, And so I'm walking along in the woods on my own, because when you're fasting, you really have nothing to do or to look forward to, I'm just sort of walking along, and I'm pondering, how am I going to play this role? How can I play Babe Ruth? I can't do it. I can't do it. And I stopped, and I was really in the middle of the forest, a path. And I just happened to look down, and there was something buried in the ground beneath my feet.
A Snickers bar.
Well, or a hot dog, right? No. What it was I bent down and I dug around it, and this is what I pulled out. Can you see this?
Oh my God. It's a baseball bat.
This is the very bottom of a baseball bat, right?
Yeah.
This was buried in the ground, and I put it in my hands, and then I put my other hand, first I put it there because I'm naturally a right-handed swinger, right? But then I switched it. I put my right hand and I looped my pinky around the bottom, which is, of course, what the Babe did.
Yep.
And I put my hands on the rest of where the bat would be, and I took it back, and I realized that it's all about the swing, man. If I can perfect the swing, that's my portal into the Babe. That's my window, my doorway into the Babe Ruth. It's all about the swing. And from that moment on, that's what actually gave me the audacity and the confidence to play the role. And to me, it's one of those incredibly magical things that happens once in a while. And during the entire time that I was playing the Babe, I felt that magic.
Wow, that's amazing.
Then I went down and I started working with Rod Carew. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Rodney had a school, his hitting school down in Anaheim. And I would drive down every day, and he'd close the school, and he turned me into Babe Ruth, as it were.
We're sports guys, Stephen, and so if you watch baseball scenes, the first thing I look for in an actor is, has this guy ever swung a bat or thrown a ball? And to me, when I watch this, the answer was yes. So either you perfected it via acting, or you actually had swung a bat at some point in your life. Because
Oh well, I mean, I was a good ball player. There's no doubt about that. But there's a bit of a difference between being a good ball player and being Babe Ruth.
Well, right.
Yeah, and also I tell you something. What I did discover was that I was very, very good and strong from the left side, and it made me wonder if perhaps I wasn't a southpaw in any case, just had been socialized, into being a right-handed player. It was much harder learning to throw lefty and look good doing it because, Ruth had a great arm, as you know.
Right.
And we did one scene where I was playing right field, I guess, and I caught a ball and threw it in. I don't know if it's in the picture or not, but I did it okay. But the hitting was everything.
More natural hitting.
Much more natural, absolutely.
You mentioned Rod Carew and that hitting school, and that has memories because when Rod found out he got into the Hall of Fame, I actually did an interview with Rod at that hitting school. So, but the thing I wanted to talk about was you mentioned you're right-handed. And I remember when they did Pride of the Yankees with Gary Cooper, he was right-handed too, and they did like illusion tricks where the uniform backwards, shoot in reverse. He didn't actually bat left-handed. You actually wanted to
the negative.
Right. You actually wanted to learn to bat left-handed, and you did a great job. Talk about the process and then working with Rod.
Well, what we did was Rod was you've met Rod, Rod, and at first it was a very, he was quite formal. And I remember I was driving down from LA to Anaheim, and I was 5 minutes late. And I think the first thing Rod said to me was, if you're 5 minutes late again, don't bother coming. And so of course I was, completely mortified and was never late again. And I'm not a late person in any case, but from there, he started breaking it down. Of course, we looked at photos and film of Babe's swing, of his footwork, the way he'd kind of step, that wonderful little jump step that he'd take sometimes. And Rod, we just kept working it and filming it, and then putting kind of me next to Ruth to see how it would look, how the swing would look. So much of it had less to do with making contact, at first, than it did just kind of assimilating the substance of the style and form that the Babe had. Then I started lacing the ball pretty good, and I was feeling pretty good, and he could see I was, so he said, "Okay, it's time to meet Mr. Curveball." Because you can load the machine to throw curves, right?
Yeah.
So I almost dislocated my back. and
just to keep you honest.
But ultimately, we learned that we became very, very, very good, close friends. And I was at the hall. He invited me to the hall for his induction. And it was very, 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 very good to be involved with Rod, to get him. And he remains to this day a very, very good friend.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we've all had interactions with Rod, and he is one of the best.
Going into the movie, how much did you know about the Babe?
I know. Well, did I know a lot? I knew a good bit, I guess, because I'm, a baseball fan. Definitely a Yankee. I always grew up with the Yanks, although with the Mets as well. And I'm from Queens, so of course it was a natural progression for me to dig the Mets. And of course, Casey coming over made the transition all that much easier. But that does not mean that that in any way diminishes your affection for the Yanks, for Mickey Mantle and Whitey and Yogi and Elston and everybody else, the whole crew. So I was one of those guys who was kind of rooting for both teams with the understanding that there was no way they would ever meet in anything more significant than a Mayor's Trophy game. And then, years later they did. And what I learned is when the Yanks play the Mets for all the marbles, I root for the Mets these days because, So, but that doesn't really answer your question at all, does it?
We loved it either way.
What was the question? What did you learn, let's say, about the Babe?
Yeah.
I learned who he was kind of, I think, emotionally. I tried to chart his feelings as it dawned on him, as he understood that his feelings of self-worth and self-importance, as you know, became clear what an absolute superstar he was. And coming from the background that he came from, which was, of course, as you know, a rugged background, and not a background that was designed to inspire someone towards self-confidence, and to kind of try to separate, to kind of learn what it was about Ruth that was arrogance, and what was it about Ruth that was just pure earned pride. What, you know, in what ways, what were his vulnerabilities, what would hurt him, and what was important to him. You know, the things, I suppose, just trying to get, what I was trying to do was penetrate the myth, and to try to get to the man, to kind of give myself an understanding of the man so I could embody him. And you do that through the literature partly, certainly through books like Creamer, but there were a number of other ones as well. And partly through talking to the few people. I remember having a wonderful talk with Jimmy Reese. You guys probably know Jimmy Reese, right?
There was Angel Days at the end.
Yeah, about it. And, you know, Jimmy, of course, kind of worshipped Ruth, you know, even though he collided with Ruth in a game and kind of was knocked out. And all the trainers ran out and ran right past Jimmy Reese. When he was a rookie, they just left him there, kind of lying there, you know, knocked cold. How are you, babe? You know? And so to kind of understand the reverence that he had for him, and and also to learn about some of his behaviors that were not at all quaint, and not at all particularly acceptable or cute. You know, the fact that Babe could be extremely crude, and that he could be extremely cruel as well, you know, and that's part of him too. So I guess the answer is, I was just trying to really kind of get everything I possibly could to humanize this guy, because if you just kind of do myth after myth after myth after myth, that's what they did when he was alive. You know, that's what the ghost-written books were about. That's what the movie with William Bendix was about.
Right.
And we were trying to do something that had a bit more, I think, substance and a little more authentic truth to it, maybe.
It's not so much trying to impersonate him. You're not doing an impersonation. You're just trying to get the essence of the character and somehow show that in the film, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first time we did a makeup, and I remember it was Mike Westmore, who's one of the Hollywood Westmores, who are they're the best makeup artists you're going to get anywhere. He did a full makeup on me, and that makeup took over 4 hours. And then they brought in wardrobe and everything, and I was wearing I wasn't wearing a baseball uniform. I was wearing a suit with a camel's hair coat and a kind of an 8-quarter cap, and had a cigar. And I walked into a production meeting where the producers were, and they, you know, there was just this incredibly stunned silence because Babe Ruth had walked in. But what it really was kind of, in a sense, a bobblehead doll of Babe Ruth had walked in. I was so, you know, packed with makeup and prosthetic that there wasn't a whole lot of room to act in there, maybe. But that's how that works. So in no sense was I ever interested in impersonating Ruth, you know?
Right.
Yeah. I wanted to embody him.
Right.
But you were talking about those noses, and didn't you donate all those noses to Cooperstown?
I was doing every day. They'd put the nose on me. I guess it was a silicone nose. They put it on, and then you blend it and make it up, and it's great. And that's the nose for the day. And at the end of the day, they peel it off, and the makeup artist would pin it as if it were a butterfly, you know, to this corkboard. And so you could kind of track the progress of the film by counting the noses, correct? And so anyway, we wrap and I leave. And then I guess 2 years later, about I'm doing a picture up in Ventura, and the makeup artist from Babe Ruth, Michael Smith was his name. He gets hired onto this film, and I guess he looks up and says, "Oh God, Lang's in it," and he shows up and he's got this big cork board, with all these noses that are pinned to it. And he said, "This is for you." It's like, thanks. Huh? What am I going to do with these? Gee, wait till my wife sees this. Where are we going to put this, honey?
right above the mantle.
She'll love this.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of what ended up going on down to the museum. That nose, the noses.
Stephen, you're a slender guy, especially when you are fasting for a week at a time. But for this role, did you have to put on some weight?
I did. I went up to 189, that was my target. It was always hard to kind of hold on to because of the filming, because of the wardrobe and everything, because of the I was always sweating and stuff like that. So I was eating a lot. But 189 had been my target because that was what, according to my research, what Babe weighed when Boston sold him to Jacob Rupert. He was 189. He quickly from there went up to 206, 212, and then by around 1923, 1924 was up in the 220s and then even higher from there. But 189, and from there we did graduated paths.
Yeah, because everyone has this image of Babe, as being heavy set with the gut. But his early days with the Red Sox, you look at the pictures, he's muscular and he's cut and stuff, and people don't realize that.
Absolutely, he was. I mean, he was the full package. I mean, he could do everything a baseball player is supposed to do, and he was a fine defensive player, and he was fleet of foot back in the day.
Right.
Yeah, then eventually he became what was characterized as a beer can on two matchsticks.
I was going to say, you talked about working with Rod Carew, one of the greatest left-handed hitters around. You also had a scene in the movie with another great left-handed hitter, Pete Rose. Tell us about that. What'd you learn from him?
Oh, from Pete. Well, I think Pete had recently been sprung, when he did this. And of course, I believe that that this comes under the classification of stunt casting, which I'm all in favor of, totally in favor of, because it's like Ty Cobb has one scene in this, in the thing. And I remember Frank Pace, who was the producer on this. Frank Pace and Larry Little were the guys who were responsible for this, for this film. And they said, we're going to get Pete Rose is going to do it. He can't wear a uniform because he's banned from wearing a uniform. He'll get in trouble to do this. But you're going to have a scene with him. So Pete, we were shooting in Cleveland because old Cleveland Municipal looked a lot more like Yankee Stadium than Yankee Stadium did at the time.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I remember Pete came and he spent 3 or 4 days in Cleveland. We went out to dinner a couple of times and he's told stories. And, he was pretty much what you'd expect him to be. He was very, very affable. He was fun to be with. He knew everything that you needed to know about Babe Ruth. I think he might have tested me at the table too. And I think I did all right, and he told a lot of stories, and we got along. We got along just great. And then we played the scene, and he did a a yeoman-like job. He's fine. Does a good job.
He is
in the movie.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah. So that was kind of a bit of a thrill.
Yeah, I have to imagine in your line of work that you just never know when you're going to have these opportunities where, next thing you know, you're having dinner with Pete Rose and you're at a hitting clinic with Rod. You know what I mean? Like, it's just these things you could never foresee are happening to you. That must keep.
Well, I think you guys will appreciate that certain sports figures are on pedestals to guys, to people. And for me, it was always baseball players. There was some certainly Joe Willie, Jimmy Brown, probably a few others, Sherman Plunkett, guys like Don Maynard or something. There were football players who were important to me, but nothing like baseball players were gods.
Right.
To me, they were the American gods. Mickey Mantle and Roger, they just were. And Babe that's like talking about Zeus, you know?
Right. When you do a movie, I imagine that each one has its own individual story about the process. Is there anything about this role and the making of this movie in particular that you remember fondly?
Oh, I remember the entire thing fondly because it was such to me, it was such a blessing, such a gift that I would be entrusted, you know, with this role. And I think we can probably, I don't know if you want to agree or not, but I do think that it's not unfair to say that Babe had not been played with in any definitive fashion. And I'm not making a claim towards that at all. I'm sure everybody did their best. But I think our film, and certainly according to the Ruth family, to Julia, Ruth, I remember she wrote me and she said, "You got daddy. You got daddy." Yeah. So that made me feel really, really quite good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, we had his granddaughter on, like I mentioned earlier, Linda, last week. Yeah. And I go, there's been so many portrayals of your grandfather. Does one stand out? And she kind of thinks, she goes, there was this TV movie made like 30 years ago, and this is the one. So that must make you feel great to think that the family is looking as your portrayal as the one that comes closest to their father, grandfather, the Babe.
I'm pleased that she does, and I gave it my best shot, and we worked so hard to make the film. And I remember my hands were, just bleeding. Some days they were so raw. My having to ice my back constantly. It took a toll doing it, and then getting out there and hitting, and you're in front of a crew, and they're not burning them in at 85 or 90 miles an hour. But it's got to look like what it's got to look like,
Yeah.
So they're throwing, and I'm Babe Ruth. I gotta keep connecting, and you don't always connect,
right,
and so it was a grueling process. But like I said, I felt very well supported by the director, Mark Tinker, by, as I said, Larry Little, and particularly Frank Pace, our producers, and Brandon Tartikoff was hugely supportive, with the network. And then we had an excellent supporting cast. Neil McDonough was he was a very, very good as Lou Gehrig, and Bruce Weitz was Miller Huggins,
right.
From Hill Street Blues.
Right.
He was right on. He was dead on. And Donald Moffat, the great Donald Moffat, who you would know more. He was really a very, very revered stage actor, but did plenty of film as well. He played Jacob Rupert beautifully, I thought. And then John Anderson played Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and I think he probably played that like 5 or 6 times during his career. Yeah. Whenever they needed a Mountain Landis, they called John Anderson. Yeah. And Lisa Zane as Julia, very good. Yeah, wonderful.
Brian Doyle Murray.
That's right, Brian.
Brian Doyle Murray as the sports track. Yeah.
What I really loved, too, about the movie was the wardrobe. I mean, the uniforms were really spot on, the no numbers, and the road gray, really dark gray flannels. You made them, you sweated just looking at those things. They look so heavy.
Yeah, and also the sleeves, they would cut them kind of long. I didn't like the cut of the sleeves because the cut of the sleeves is long. It tends to make one look smaller than what it is. And if anything, I always wanted to look bigger. But they were accurate. That was done by a wonderful rag picker named Daryl Levine, and I think received an Emmy for it, if I'm not mistaken.
When I'm growing up, every time I saw something of Babe Ruth, there was always this stern-looking guy. I didn't know much about him. Your portrayal of him humanized him for me, and it humanized him for other people. Choosing the way how did you choose the way you wanted to play Babe that way? He was fun-loving. He was he was a guy that I had never known from reading about.
Well, I mean, I let Babe dictate how he was gonna, how I was gonna play him. I mean, Babe was at my shoulder a lot of the time during the filming of this. But one of the things you could say was, Babe had this. It's not unfair to say he had a voracious and an insatiable appetite for everything. You know, well, for food and for women at least. You know. But also for the booze and just for the crowd, for the adulation, for everything. He was voracious, and so that was a big thing that I was trying to kind of grasping for in the portrayal as well. At the same time, just giving credence to the poor the orphan kid.
Right.
In there, you know, the kid who ended up at St. Mary's, you know, and they made him a left-handed catcher to start. I mean, can you imagine a more, you know,
right?
You know, that it's a wacky thing to do.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
Now, isn't there a lot of actors that what's it called, method acting, where they encompass the character? So were you Babe Ruth even when you weren't playing Babe Ruth after the shooting was done for the night, or did you just go back to being Stephen Lang? Because in that voracious appetite.
I went to bed. I mean, I think because I knew I'd have like a 6 a.m. call, and I'd get back to wherever I was probably around 8:30 in the evening, and I'd just go to bed and get up and do it again. So what I'm saying is, for the duration of the shoot, I was more in character than I was ever out of character. I would put it that way. But a lot of times that character was just being manifest by me just closing my eyes and putting my head down,
right.
Something, you know, like that. But sure, I'm as method as the next method actor, I suppose. But that can mean all sorts of things.
Right. Yes. There's a degree of method.
Yes.
Stephen, Babe is a beloved figure, but since then, many of the roles you've played are, let's just say, not as likable as the Babe. Is there something about playing a bad guy that is really fun?
Well, you can imagine that. I mean, I think you probably know the answer that, you know, it can be good to be bad. It's good to do, you know, to do things in a way that you would never be allowed to do in any normal civilized context. To be able to kind of act out those impulses in what is an artificial or a safe environment, it's a film or something, that can be extremely cathartic. It can be, and it can be just a whole lot of fun. Villains are seductive, and they're attractive, and they're efficient often, and a lot of times they're very full of themselves, and a lot of times they're, you know, kind of full of shit too, you know. Yeah, and so but the key is always to always give the devil his due. You know what I mean? Villains rarely conceive of themselves as villains. Right. Some do, but rarely do. They're the heroes of their own stories as well. And generally speaking, they're convinced that they're right, that they're correct, you know? So that's it. And if I've had any success playing, you know, darker characters over the years, I think it's partly attributable to the fact that I do care about them, you know what I mean? I do, because my theory is that, you know, if I don't love them, no one will. But if I love them enough, then people will recognize that, even if they don't, you know, even if they don't share that love, you know, they'll take that character seriously. Yeah.
Where do you rank your performance of the Babe with your other performances? Like, for instance, I remember Gods and Generals, where you're playing Stonewall Jackson, which was a really meaty role with a lot of lines. So how would you rank Babe compared to some of the other performances you've done?
Well, I got a whole lot of them tied for first.
Good answer.
I got a traffic jam up at the top, you know, and the others, that ones down in the cellar, I don't even think about them. I can't remember them anymore at all. But Babe certainly was one of the more challenging roles that I've had, just physically, I think. And also, you know, when you are playing a character, look, Stonewall Jackson good example, historical figure. I did a huge, in many, many ways, the work I did on Jackson could be mirrored in its own way by the work that I did on Babe Ruth, because there's just so much to learn about the man. And both of these men, Ruth and Stonewall Jackson, they were observed by all observers. So there's an awful lot of testimony as to what this guys looked like, what they wore, what they ate, how they walked, how they rode a horse, how they drove a car, whatever it is. So there was a similarity, I think, in going after both of those roles. When you are playing a historical figure like that, you have a special obligation, it seems to me, to really try to, I don't know if get it right is the right way to put it, but to be as absolutely specific and authentic as you possibly can, partly because the scrutiny that you're going to come under from fans,
I would say one of the coolest things when I was doing research for you was I got on a heritage auction site, and there's a baseball card of you as Babe Ruth. I thought, who knew you'd have a baseball card? Isn't that great?
If they had said, look, we want you to play Babe Ruth, but we're not going to pay you, but Topps is going to do a series of cards. I said, okay. And in fact, Topps did do a series of 11 cards, and it's absolutely thrilling, to have a baseball card, and to have a set. And I keep I have an uncut set of 11 cards that I have framed, and I have them in my downstairs powder room.
That is so cool.
So Stephen, we have a segment we do here called 50-50. I give you a trivia question from 50 years ago. You have a 50% chance to get it right. It's true or false, or basically simple question. Here it goes. 1974, 50 years ago, there was another TV movie biopic about a baseball player. This was about Roy Campanella. It was called It's Good to Be Alive. True or false? Lou Gossett played Roy Campanella in that film.
I'm going to say true.
Okay, false. He played the doctor in the film. Paul Winfield played Roy Campanella in that one.
It's better casting. It is better casting. Yeah.
The thing is, Stephen, when you're I always say this about Rocky. Rocky's not a boxing movie. It's not about boxing. It's a great movie. And the best sports movies are not sports movies. They're movies that have a story. And you gave that to us with your portrayal of Babe Ruth, one of the more iconic individuals, not sports individuals, iconic individuals in our country's history. I can't thank you enough for coming on today and sharing that time, that 3 weeks of portraying the Babe. Go get yourself something to eat, because just even thinking about fasting for a week has me.
I'm already hungry.
I'm getting hungry.
Yes.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Okay, nice talking to you guys, all right?
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you so much. Be well. Thank you.
Thank you, lads. Bye-bye.
So with no other better way to say this, another home run right there with our guest, Stephen Lang. And up until Hank Aaron, nobody had hit more home runs than Babe Ruth. But just a really great insight into his portrayal of Babe. Like I said, the first thing I look for always in a sports movie is, has this guy ever thrown a ball?
Right. And the swing looked good.
And I could tell right away that he had, I'm not saying that these guys need to look like they played professionally, but they have to look like they've picked up a bat before. Right. And he did that.
Like Charlie Sheen in Major League, he might be only throwing 85 miles an hour, but his form is perfect.
Yes.
His he looks like he's a baseball pitcher.
Right.
I like the fact that just that thought that he's out on a walk, and he digs something up, and it's the butt of it's the handle of a baseball, baseball bat.
Divine intervention.
Exactly. No, you're supposed to do this.
Well, right, because he's contemplating.
Yes,
how am I going
he could have very well turned it down. But it's amazing little things that happen. That happens in all of our lives at certain points, one time or another. But just amazing that's what he dug up. Not a Snickers bar.
And one of my favorite actors. I mean, everything he's in, he does a really good job. And the most important thing is he seems to enjoy what
Yeah.
he does, his work.
yeah.
You know, some actors can be pretentious. He seems to be very down to earth, just a regular guy who just loves the craft of acting.
Yeah, I want to just before if we still talk about it for a sec, I want to thank Lisa Lieberman and Emily Janover that really worked hard to get Steven to do this. It takes a lot of work to try to figure out
Yeah,
schedules.
these guys' schedules, yeah.
Emily and I have had at least 25 to 30 email correspondence to get this interview. So I want to thank them for going all out to do that. He was as great as expected.
Let's move on. I like this next one because it's like you get to see someone before you knew who that someone was. And that's University of Minnesota beats Michigan Tech to win the NCAA championship under head coach Herb Brooks. Do you believe in miracles?
Yes.
Right? The coach of the Team USA hockey team, the Miracle on Ice.
But to go back and coach, he quit his job as an insurance salesman.
Right.
To go and coach Minnesota took him to 3 titles.
Yep.
I know. And you can see exactly the kind of team he then put together for the USA squad because they start the year 0-4-1. They turn it around with Brooks saying, look, all the pieces are there. In the Final Four, Minnesota's the only team without an All-American. Brooks said, don't worry about individuals. It's a team that's going to win this. And that is the 1980 USA versus Russia game to a T. So just interesting. You know, this is 1974. This is 6 years before that miraculous run at Lake Placid.
Another guy that died way too young, too.
All of it. You know, I will go down a rabbit hole every once in a while when I see this and go back and look at, you know, the last minute of that game. And you can hear, like when Michael says it, the do you believe in miracles? Those guys have been around sports their whole lives.
Yeah.
Nothing shocks them anymore.
Yeah.
You could tell that shocked him.
Right.
It completely caught him by surprise. Because if you people don't know this, the Russians toured like the year before in the U.S. and played a bunch of exhibition games, and they were beating Team USA like 11-2. I mean, they were just
greatest
smoking
players
them.
ever. Yeah.
And so it was fait accompli that, you know, who was going to win the silver because we knew who was winning the gold.
I wonder if the opposite happened when Russia upset the USA in a very controversial gold medal game in the 72 Olympics. If there was a Russian announcer that had, do you believe in miracles?
Yeah.
But for the Russians,
maybe that ending was so weird that it might not have allowed.
Well, there was so many
for that kind of dramatic.
Yeah,
because they
cheated.
yeah.
Ask Doug Collins about that. Right, that's the team that still won't wear their silver medals.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah. Hot pants take the chill off skating. Now this is crazy to me. I don't ice skate. But I've been around, you know, ice skates. When you go to a hockey game, it's cold. It's an ice rink. They didn't have warm-up outfits for skaters back then until this woman came up with something, and it was a pretty good idea, right, Bill?
Yeah, former fashion model Anya Robertson. She came up with more styles that were convenient and easy. Her company, Polar Sport, produced the first warm-up designed especially for skaters. Skaters used to have to wear top coats and pea sweaters around the knees. I'm not sure what a pea sweater is, but I know it's not something you would wear when you're trying to warm up to be a skater.
Right.
No, they said that these poor kids looked like they were freezing.
Yeah. She said, she goes, you can't wear ski pants because they are too bulky, or tennis gear because they don't fit over the skates. But, you know, she had a good idea because they eventually became the official outfitter of the U.S. figure skating's world and Olympic teams.
Clarence Walker, whom I had never heard of, but Foots Walker I had. Isn't that funny how that works?
Yeah.
Never heard of Clarence Walker. Foots was a basketball player at West Georgia, helped them win the NAIA championship. He won the MVP of the tournament, averaging 22 points and 9 assists. He's drafted in the 3rd round of the NBA by Cleveland, spent 10 years in the NBA, the first Cavaliers player ever to record a triple-double, and just one of those names that I know I never saw him play. I think for sure if you had said to me, Clarence Walker, blah, 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 I'd look at you with a blank stare. Foots Walker, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I remember that name. You know, probably had his basketball card or something like that. The name is green. The game is ripe. It's about Hubert Green, just a kid trying to make it on the tour at the time. And 1974 was his breakout year. He won the Bob Hope Desert Classic in February. That was the one we talked about, Arnold Palmer having that huge following. And no one's paying attention to the leaderboard. They're all paying attention to Arnie's Arnold Palmer. But it was the first of his 4 wins on the season. He would go on to have a Hall of Fame career, winning 19 times. He died almost 6 years ago. I didn't know that, at the age of 71. Another one of those names from the past, just died way too young. He was 71 years old. So, and apparently a really good guy.
Right. I think he only had won 2 majors, and they were like a decade apart. The last one being the PGA Championship in '85. He had like that a big bridge in between winning his majors.
But I liked his honesty. He said after winning the Bob Hope, he went home and didn't play golf for a while because everybody was telling me how good I was. And I was saying, hey, tell me more, and maybe a little louder the next time. So you sort of start buying into what people are saying and go, I am good. Yeah. I don't need to go out there and practice. Yeah. But you also, the story that someone had threatened to kill him on the course. He got a death threat on the course.
Oh, really?
So he kept playing. I think it was in the... At the final round of the 77 U.S. Open, police pulled him to the side and informed him that an anonymous caller had phoned in a death threat. He kept playing, actually ended up winning.
Yeah.
And he said afterwards, he goes, my caddy and I just talked to each other and said, hey, let's just keep going through this. Don't say anything. Don't act like we know. That takes a lot of courage because in those days, any day, you never know who actually may have it out for you.
Right. I wondered the decision that went into telling him or not telling him,
Yeah.
I guess you
almost have to, don't you?
tell him,
and because he's got to make the decision. So if you tell him and he goes, I'm out of here, you can't maybe chance it that someone does shoot him and go, well, we knew about it, but, So he made
all right, before we wrap this one up, am I forgetting anything before we get on to the...
Well, playing like an amateur, Frank Torres, I showed this, kid playing billiard, and in 2023 he was still playing billiards, obviously looking a lot older, but it's nice to see that he was able to do what he loved to do for a long time.
Well, I'm just going to give you a peek into my childhood.
Yeah.
I was this was about 19 years old, and I go to school and I go to work one day, and I come home and there's a huge pool table in the middle of our living room, brand new, beautiful.
Nice. All right.
I went to my mom and she goes, I said, Mom, how can we have a pool table in the middle of our living room? She goes, I don't know. I went out yesterday with some friends and they gave it to me. Oh. So they wheeled it over to our house, stuck it right in our living room. It was huge. So everyone came to my house and played pool.
For how long?
Year. I mean,
did you use it? Then it started becoming a place where you put stuff, your books.
Dining table, like in the Beverly Hillbillies.
We did.
It was their fancy table.
But then once your friends find out, Saturday nights become over at your house.
Yeah.
Oh, let's go play pool. So, at one point in time, I stunk at pool, and then I got to the pool table, and I still stunk. But still, it was there.
That's not usually the normal setting for a living room.
No, I just came home one day and it was there. I thought, hey, the TV's here and the pool table's there. So I was like, okay, I guess we'll just watch TV.
Was it just a pool table? Did you ever actually get like a
no, we
cue
had everything.
Pinball?
We had 6 cues. We had sticks. We had the little dinglies on the end of the pockets, so they went in. All the balls are crisp. To this day, I don't know how my mom got it. She just said, "Oh,
you know who was really good at pool?
Who?
Kramer.
Yeah, he sure is. Sure is.
With that little stick.
Yeah, he is.
Taking on the maestro.
Didn't they come in with a Manzier on that?
Yes.
One?
By the way, is dinglies the proper pronunciation?
I don't know what it's called. It's called dinglies.
Yes.
Let's go
over to Bill's. Play with his dinglies.
I'll play with it.
What else? For the
pipeline. The pipeline, which was interesting because they had a whole story on the Alaska pipeline, which wasn't finished till 1977. That's when it, opened up, which is fast. And
do
then
you need to take that, Mark?
Okay. And then they, it's that guy Spam calling me again.
Yeah.
Get him. And then it ended up in Valdez, which of course, Valdez is best known for oil spills. So, but it was interesting that this is in the process of them building the pipeline.
I wish my dad was alive for many reasons. One would be, he collected issues of Sports Illustrated from the very first one in 1954 until his death in 95. And I would ask him, did you read these articles?
Yeah.
Because
what do you think?
I would say no.
Okay.
I would say no. I don't know. He was a huge reader.
What happened to all the
Yeah,
SIs?
we kept them going for probably another 10 or 15 years, and they were at my brother's house, and then it got to be too much, and he felt like he couldn't get rid of them, you know, but that also, when was this going to end? If we had known it was only going to go another 10 years before they went all digital, then maybe we would have kept them, but no, he ended up selling them. You know who would have liked the Alaska pipeline story, though? Larry Zonka.
Yes.
Oh my God, he would have. Oh my
No,
God.
he would have been against the pipeline. I would
Yeah, he
imagine.
would have been.
He would have been our guest again.
Yeah. For the record, Roberto Duran, Hands of Stone, knocked out Esteban de Jesus in the 11th round of a 15-round fight to retain his world lightweight title and defeat the only man who up to that moment had beaten Duran in 42 fights. I remember hating Roberto Duran for a long time because I was such a Sugar Ray fan early on. He's the kind of guy now you look back at and go, oh my gosh, I hated him. You know why I hated him? Because he was so good.
Yeah, I met him in
was
Vegas.
so good.
Just an extremely nice guy.
Is that right?
Yeah, so understated. You wouldn't know he was Hands of Stone.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's a shame that really he's best known for No Mas.
That's right. Unfortunate.
Because he was a great fighter.
Yeah.
19th hole, unless there's something else you
I
guys
just
have?
got the Toronto goalie, Gil Scratton, was the first WHA streaker.
Oh,
Sailing-
Mark, listen up.
Come on, man. Sailing around his home rink in skates and mask at a team practice. And then to the NHL, a lady at the Kings game named Cindy wore only a Kings banner as she walked around the length of the rink.
Nice.
Hey, there you go. At least
Well,
it's a
that's
lady this time, Marty.
Team spirit.
That's right.
Equal opportunity in streaking.
That's right.
Wouldn't she be known as the queen?
She should be. Exactly.
The SI jinx before the Madden jinx, which is prevalent now with the kids. There was the Sports Illustrated jinx, and Leonard Perlman of Durham, North Carolina writes, a team or individual lauded in SI is like a kiss of death. A cover story, immediate catastrophe. As a devoted Wolfpack fan, I must beg Sports Illustrated not to do any stories on the NC State basketball team until the NCAA championships are over. No such luck, Leonard.
Yeah.
NC State is on the cover of this one and next week's as well.
They
And the
did
cruise
all right.
didn't work.
They did all right, didn't
Proving
they? Yeah.
That the SI jinx, it's kind of like the same as like don't say anything about a no-hitter, right? So anyway, next week we will talk to one of the winners of that national championship team, Monty Tao. The you can't say apparently Monty Tao's name without saying diminutive,
Yeah, always.
small,
I know.
or whatever.
I know.
Small guy, apparently 5'7", but a great point guard on a great basketball team. So look forward to talking to him about one of the great runs in college basketball history.
Well, there's one thing I wanted to share. You've heard the story. The Clippers have new uniforms, right, for the new arena. And apparently they were looking into possibly changing their names. But I guess the fans were just totally against it. Do not change the names, which ruined my idea because I thought they should have changed their name to the LA Condors. They could have kept the initials or the California Condors.
Yeah, I agree.
But no, apparently they like Clippers. So
And that's basically because San Diego, when they were there, with all the
yeah, but they were the
ships there.
Buffalo Braves at one time.
Yes.
Right? You know.
Yeah, they have such a rich storied history.
They do. They do.
They have that championship from what year was that?
That 1 year.
You know, when
Yeah.
they had that one guy.
Yeah, the one guy that was
Yeah.
sort of tall but a little
Yeah.
bit short.
Right.
Dark
By
hair.
the
blonde,
way,
yeah.
if you're listening to this podcast in
all
July
right.
after their victory parade,
Mark,
Whatever
I'll
yours
bet
is.
you
No
$1.
chance.
$1 right now. They don't even get to the
okay,
Western
I
Conference
say,
Finals.
I say right now, not $1, man, 34 cents. That's what I was
Okay,
going.
that's okay.
34 cents.
Okay.
The Clippers win a title.
All right. That's past our
Done.
time. We're well past it.
Sorry.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you next week.
Loser.
Monty Tao from North Carolina State. See you then.
See ya. I want my 34 cents.
Loser.